The horse changed everything, but for most of human history it was a wild animal, untamed and untouchable. How did we bridge that gap? The Przeworski's horse is the last surviving wild horse, but it is not the ancestor of domestic horses. The true ancestor of modern horses is the now extinct tarpan. These wild horses roamed the Eurasian steppes for thousands of years. They were smaller than today's horses, with a dun coat and a dark stripe down. The first domestication likely happened on the Eurasian steppes around 3500 BCE. The Botai culture in modern-day Kazakhstan kept horses for meat and milk, but they did not ride them. They used them as livestock, not transportation. The real revolution came later, around 2000 BCE, when someone first climbed onto a horse's back. This changed warfare, trade, and migration forever. The horse became a tool of that ancestor. The tarpan is extinct. For thousands of years, early humans hunted horses for meat. They were prey, not partners. But around 3500 BCE, something changed. In the steppes of Central Asia, people began to keep horses. The question is, how? Horses were not native to the Americas until the Spanish brought them in the 1500s. But in Eurasia, they evolved alongside humans. The key was the steppe, vast grasslands where wild horses roamed in herds. Early herders learned to follow these herds, slowly gaining. The first domesticated horses were likely used for milk and meat, not riding. Archaeologists have found evidence of horse milk in ancient pots, but riding changed everything. It gave people speed, range, and a new kind of power. Once people learned to ride, they could control herds, hunt more effectively, and travel farther. The horse became a tool of expansion. And with that, the first horse cultures were born on the steppes, where the grass was endless and the horizon wide. And why? The earliest clear evidence of horse domestication comes from the Botai culture in modern-day Kazakhstan, around 3500 BCE. Archaeologists found thousands of horse bones at Botai sites. But were they wild or domestic? The bones showed signs of wear, bit damage on the teeth, indicating they had been bridled and ridden. Further analysis revealed something even more telling. The leg bones of the Botai horses were thinner and more gracile than those of wild horses. This is a classic sign of domestication, as captive animals often have less robust skeletons due to reduced activity and different diets. The Botai people were not just hunting horses. They were keeping them, breeding them, and using. But the Botai horses were not the ancestors of modern domestic horses. Genetic studies show that modern horses descend from a different lineage, one that was domesticated later in the Pontic-Caspian steppe, north of the Black Sea. This second domestication event, around 2000 BCE, gave rise to the horses that would transform warfare, trade, and migration. The domestication of the horse was a turning point in human history. It allowed people to travel faster, carry heavier loads, and wage war from horseback. The horse-drawn chariot, invented around 2000 BCE, became a weapon of mass disruption, enabling empires to expand at unprecedented speed. The horse did not just change how we moved, it changed how we lived, fought, and thought about distance. Damage on teeth, suggesting the use of bridles. Pottery fragments contain traces of horse milk, a clear sign of domestication. But genetic studies later revealed that Botai horses were not the ancestors of modern domestic horses. They were a separate lineage. So, the first true domestic horse, the one that would change history, appeared elsewhere. The Yamnaya people, pastoral herders from the Pontic-Caspian steppe, are now considered the most likely candidates for the first horse tamers. Around 3300 BCE, they began to harness horses not just for milk and meat, but for riding and pulling wagons. This was a revolution. The Yamnaya didn't just ride horses, they lived with them. Their culture spread rapidly across Eurasia, carrying horse-based technology and possibly the ancestor of Indo-European languages. The horse became a tool of expansion, trade, and warfare. But the evidence for early riding is indirect. Changes in human skeletons, such as wear on the pelvis and thigh bones, suggest frequent riding. By 2000 BCE, the horse had transformed from a source of food to a partner in conquest. Chariots thundered across battlefields from Egypt to China. The horse carried empires, ideas, and diseases. It shrank the world. And it all began with a few brave steppe people who first dared to climb onto the back of a wild animal and hold on. Botai may have tamed horses, but their lineage died out. The real domestication story lies elsewhere. Around 3000 BCE, the Yamnaya culture emerged on the Pontic-Caspian steppe. They were nomadic herders and they had horses. Yamnaya graves contain horse bones and cheek pieces. These cheek pieces were used to control horses with a bit, a key innovation in riding. For bridles, suggesting they rode horses. Genetic evidence shows that modern domestic horses descend from a population that lived in the Pontic-Caspian steppe around 2200 BCE. But how did the Yamnaya capture and tame wild horses? It likely began with corralling, gradually habituating them to human presence. Over generations, the boldest and calmest horses were bred, leading to the domesticated horse that would revolutionize warfare, trade, and migration across Eurasia. The domesticated horse gave the Yamnaya a huge advantage. They could now move herds more efficiently, travel farther, and carry more goods. This mobility allowed them to expand rapidly across the steppe, spreading their culture and This expansion is known as the Yamnaya horizon, stretching from the Urals to the Carpathians. Their genetic footprint is still found in modern Europeans, especially in the north. The horse was the engine of this transformation. Selective breeding. Horses are social animals. By capturing a few, humans could control the herd. Over generations, they bred for tameness. It was a slow process, not a single event, but centuries of trial and error. Around 2000 BCE, the Sintashta culture emerged in the steppes of modern-day Russia and Kazakhstan. They were among the first to truly master horse riding and chariot warfare. The Sintashta buried their horses and chariots together in elaborate graves. These burials show how deeply horses were woven into their identity, both as tools of war and symbols of status. This mastery of the horse gave the Sintashta a military advantage. Their chariots were fast and maneuverable, allowing them to dominate neighboring tribes and spread their influence across the steppes. In the southern Urals, the Sintashta culture took horse domestication to a new level. They invented the chariot. Sintashta graves contain the earliest known chariots, with spoked wheels and horse harnesses. Chariots were fast and light. They changed warfare and allowed rapid expansion across the steppe. This innovation spread rapidly, transforming societies from China to Europe. The Sintashta also bred horses for strength and speed. They were the first true horse masters. Their innovations spread across Eurasia, from China to Europe, transforming societies. In 2021, a landmark genetic study sequenced the genomes of 273 ancient horses. It revealed that modern domestic horses descend from a lineage that emerged in the Pontic-Caspian steppe around 2200 BCE, precisely matching the Sintashta culture. This genetic evidence confirms that the Sintashta not only domesticated horses, but also developed the first light, spoke-wheeled chariots. These chariots, pulled by their specially bred horses, gave them a military advantage that the Sintashta culture eventually declined, but their legacy endured. Their horses and chariot technology spread across the ancient world, influencing civilizations from the Mycenaeans to the Zhou dynasty. The horse masters of the steppe had changed history. A surprising story. All modern domestic horses descend from a single population that appeared on the Pontic-Caspian steppe around 2200 BCE. This population replaced all other horse lineages, including the Botai horses. The reason is still debated. One theory: these horses had a genetic mutation that made them easier to domesticate, perhaps a calmer temperament or a stronger back for riding. Another theory points to climate change. Around 2000 BCE, the steppe became drier, and the Botai horses, adapted to wetter conditions, may have struggled. The new horses from the Pontic-Caspian region were better suited to the arid grasslands, giving them But the most dramatic possibility is that the new horses were simply better war horses. They were larger, faster, and more powerful, giving the steppe tribes who rode them a military advantage. These tribes, known as the Sintashta culture, were the first to use chariots, and their horses were bred for speed. Whatever the reason, the result was clear. By 1500 BCE, the new horse lineage had spread across Eurasia, from China to Europe. The Botai horses were gone, but their legacy lived on in the DNA of every horse that followed. The domestication of the horse had a genetic mutation that made them easier to tame. Another, they were simply better bred. Whatever the reason, this single lineage spread globally, becoming the horse we know. Horse domestication revolutionized human society. It enabled long-distance trade, migration, and communication. Horses pulled plows and chariots, transforming agriculture and warfare. Empires rose and fell on horseback. But this revolution came at a cost. Horses required vast pastures and constant care, reshaping landscapes and society, made warfare mobile. Chariots and later cavalry gave empires like the Hittites and Mongols their power. Horses also transformed agriculture, pulling plows and carts, increasing food production. But domestication came at a cost. Horses lost their freedom and many died in harsh conditions, forced to carry heavy loads or charge into battle. Conditions, yet the partnership between humans and horses was one of the most transformative in history. Despite decades of research, many questions remain. Why did the Botai lineage die out? How exactly did the Yamnaya tame horses? New discoveries continue to reshape our understanding. The Botai culture of Central Asia, around 3500 BCE, left the earliest clear evidence of horse husbandry. Their sites contain thousands of horse bones, and pottery residues show they drank mare's milk. But genetic studies reveal that modern domestic horses are not descended from Botai horses. So who were these people, and what happened to their... Then came the Yamnaya. These pastoralists from the Pontic-Caspian steppe expanded dramatically around 3000 BCE. They had wagons, and they likely used horses for mobility and herding. But did they ride them? The evidence is indirect. Bit wear on horse teeth appears later. Yet their genetic footprint is unmistakable. Yamnaya ancestry appears in modern domestic horses. New discoveries continue to reshape our understanding. Ancient DNA from horse remains across Eurasia tells a story of replacement. Around 2000 BCE, a new horse lineage, the one that gave rise to all modern domestic horses, spread rapidly, possibly alongside human migrations. The Botai horses vanished, replaced by horses with Yamnaya-related ancestry. The horse we know today is a product. The domestication of the horse began on the Eurasian steppes, likely around 3500 BCE. The Botai culture in modern-day Kazakhstan is among the earliest known to have kept horses, not just for meat, but for milking and possibly riding. But the true revolution came with the Yamnaya culture, who harnessed the horse's speed and endurance to create a mobile pastoral economy. Their wagons and chariots transformed trade, warfare, and migration across the continent. Genetic studies reveal that modern domestic horses descend from a single lineage that spread from the Pontic-Caspian steppe around 2200 BCE. This lineage replaced all wild horse populations, suggesting a selective breeding advantage. The horse changed human history. It shrank distances, enabled long-range trade, and gave rise to new forms of warfare. From the chariot to the cavalry, the horse was an engine of cultural exchange and conquest. The horse's journey from wild prey to trusted partner is not a finished chapter. It continues to evolve, as it has for thousands of years. Today, horses are no longer just tools for transport or warfare. They are companions in sport, therapy, and leisure, sharing our lives in ways our ancestors could never have imagined. Yet this partnership also raises new questions. How do we balance our use of horses with their welfare? What does a good life for a horse look like in the modern world? The story of the horse is still being written, and as long as we share this planet, that story will continue to unfold, one hoofbeat at a time.